Hi guys, this is Sai Kumar Kortewada. In this video, we will learn about creating and injecting the components in our React. So till now, we have worked only with one single component, and that is the default component which is provided by React. And now in this video, what we'll do is we'll create multiple components and we will use that components in another components. So let me go into one more slide and tell you what we are trying to do in this video. So here we are creating a header component, a body component, and also a footer component, and we want to inject all this into our app component, which is the default component. And also we will target for creating the nested components inside our body component. How we will do this, how we can map all these components, we'll see now. So let me go into the Visual Studio Code, and this is my default code, and this is my default component which is running at 3000 localhost. You can see this is the application which is the default application. Now what I'll do is I'll try to remove all this stuff inside our app component, and I'll try to create new set of components. For now I want a header component, so what I'll do is I'll just go here and create a folder called as header, and all the folders you can create with the small letters. And now I want to create a component. So whenever you are trying to create a component in React, it is always needed in a capital letter. Hence your file name should also have the capital letter. So let me go with header.js and enter. And now I will create three folders in the same way. So let me go and create a folder called as body, and the file name is body.js. Save this, and now let me go with new folder again called as footer, and let me create a file called as footer.js. So now it is very simple. We have created three folders with three different files. Now I'll go to header and I'll create a function. So first thing is how to create a React component without any snippets, and we are writing in a plain JavaScript. So let me use a function, and the function name is header. As we are using this function as a React component, it is recommended, it is always needed to write a component with capital letter, which I discussed in my previous video in the React components. So here we'll try to create a function as a HTML element. So we will be using a function and capital H, because it's a React component. We have to use first letter as a capital letter, and we have to return a JSX. Let me return a JSX from here, and the JSX is something like h1 heading or header component. So I have created a header component. And now if I want to use this header component in my app.js, I have to export this function, and how that export works in our React, I'll show you now. So now the case is I can export in two ways. One is export default, and the function name is header. I can export in this way, and we will see what is the difference between the default export and named export just in few minutes. For now I'm exporting it as a default export. The same thing I'm trying to do with the body component. Let me copy the same thing, put it over here, and let me rename this as body. And now let me copy this, put it over here and here, body component. And the same way footer component, let me go here and make it as footer, copy, paste and paste. Save this. So I have created all of them as a default export functions, and now I want to import them and inject in our app.js. So we have created now the injection process, how it takes place. So let me create a div, because all the elements whatever you are using, if you are using multiple elements, we have to keep it in one root node, and that is what I am doing here. I created a div which is a root node for my app component, and now I want to have a header component. So let me take header component, and it has been imported. And we have to remember one thing: whenever you are injecting a particular component, it should have either a closing tag or a self closing tag. If you don't put that self closing tag in React, it will throw error. So for example, if I'm removing this, it is expecting to have a closure component, so that is a closing tag. So now either you can use like this, or you can use a self closing. So for now I'm using self closing, but I'll tell you when to use self closing and when to use closing and opening tags. For now, remember, every component we are using with a self closing tag. And now the second thing is body tag. So I want to have a body tag, and it is also a default export. And now let me have a footer component, and let me close it with a self-closing tag. Let me save this and go here and just reload. Now you got header component, body component, as well as footer component. Now what I'll do is I'll create a division for them. So let me add one more div which is creating like a layout. So let me create a layout for this, save this, and let me add a horizontal line for this just to break all the components. HR tags, save this. Now go here, you can see header component, body component, and a footer component. If you want to apply some set of styles, you can apply to that. Just here the case is, if I am going into header dot component and if I change something in the header and it affects only this part of our application, that is how the virtual DOM and real DOM will work. So now what I want to do is I just want to add one more element over here by using a fragment, because I don't want to give unused elements, and that is what I have discussed in my previous video, that is React fragments. If you want to understand completely about fragments, please watch my previous video. And here let me add a paragraph telling that, hi, I am header component, and save this. Go here and you can see it has been added in my header component. Now what is the advantage of making all these divisions? Actually speaking, by making all these divisions, whenever you have some changes only in the header related stuff, then just go to the header component and change it. It reflects wherever you are trying to use this particular component. For example, I'm using header component as of now only in the app component, but in the future if I want to put that header component at any place, I can reuse. For example, below the footer also I want to have a header component. Then save this. You can see header component and header component, and if I change something in one place, it affects in the other place as well. So that is what the component reusability. So whenever you want to create a reusable stuff, then it is always recommended to create a separate component so that it can be reused at number of places, and the content can be managed by using state management and all other props and states, which we will discuss in the upcoming videos. For now, it is used to create a reusable stuff. That is also one of the advantage of creating a component, so that you can manage and you can maintain your code in a easy way. Now the thing is, here this header and the body and the footer, they all are the sibling components. Why? Because they are side by side. For example, there could be a case where you will be getting into nested components, and how that nested component works. Actually speaking, this app is one component and that is nested with three components, that is header component, body component, and the footer component. And there could be a chances where your body component can also have some XYZ components. For example, I'll go here and I'll just create another component like left.js, and I want to create one more file, right.js, and you can maintain with some CSS. Let me create a function with right, and let me return with a paragraph, and the paragraph is right container, and let me export this, export default right, and save this. Now in the same way, copy and put it over here. It is left, and it is left, and it is left. So let me save this, and now I'm not injecting this left and right components in my app component. Instead, I'm trying to keep all that left and right components in my body component. So I want to make one root element for each and every component. So let me add a fragment at this, put it over here, and then I have a left component and I have a right component. So let me use a right component and save this. Let me go here and refresh. Now you can see there is a left container and right container. So these are the two different components which you can use, and you can make any changes at any point of time. Now if I want to add some CSS, I'll talk more about CSS. For now, just for our understanding and a meaningful component structure, what I'm doing is I'm trying to create a style where I want to add a style called as display flex, and I want to make this flex approach only for this particular div, and hence I'll add a fragment. That's it. So body component will have left container and right container. let me go here and just make it as string. So I'll talk about this inline styles and everything in the upcoming video. For now, just for our understanding purpose, I have created like this. So you have a left container and you have a right container, and even we can add some justify content as space between. Save this, and you can see the left container and the right container. So these two are also individual components, but for this body component, these are the nested components. For this app component, header component is a nested one, body component is a nested one, footer component is also a nested one. So nested components also we can create and inject in our applications, and you can traverse from one component to another component. You can pass the data from one component to another component at any point of time by using all different techniques which are provided by React, and that we will talk in the upcoming videos as well. So this is how you can create your components and inject your components in your application. One thing we are missing is about default export and named exports. So for example, now I have exported as a default export. Even you can do one more export, that is nothing but a named export. Save this. If you have a JS file with lot of functions or lot number of components, then each and every component, if you want to export from that particular file, then you have to use a named export. If you use a named export, what are the different things which will happen? Let me remove this and save this. Now if you go to the app.js or go here, there is a problem in app.js. That is because of this header component only. Whenever you are trying to give a named export, it is always needed to put that particular exported components inside the flower bases. So you have to give the same name as well. So here I have an exported component, that is header, and I gave that same name, so it starts working. That's absolutely fine. And now body is having a default export. Whenever you have a default export, whenever you are importing it, you can change the name of it. So for example, I can even give body container. Let me copy this and put it over here, save this, and it works the same way. So whenever you are using a named export, the exact name you have to use in your application wherever you are importing it. And whenever you are using a default export, either you can give the same name or different name whenever you are importing it in a particular component. And the second difference is, whenever you give the named export, you should put all that components in the flower bases, whereas if you are exporting with a default export, no need to put in the flower bases. So that's how you can use your named export versus default export in your components. So that's how you can create, you can inject your components at any place by using a nested components or by using a sibling components or any type of components you can create in our React application. So that's all about creating and injecting the components in React. Hope you like my explanation. If you like my video, like, share, subscribe to my channel for more updates. Signing off. Thank you.